so I'd just gotten to Florida in early January, but I think I got there the 4th of January. And on January 10th, was going to drop my car off at a body shop to get some work done on it. I drove through heavy Florida morning traffic to get to the shop, dropped the car off, and listening to my wife tell the story, I dropped the car off, but I failed to give them the keys to the car. So clearly something was going on, certainly mentally at that time, and most certainly with my heart. And so I merely dropped the car off, grabbed the keys out of my car, and got back into my wife's car to go home. So as I actually got in my wife's car, buckled my seatbelt, we pull away from the shop, and about 30 seconds later, I pass out. And during that time, my wife had been on the phone to the winery on her hands-free car phone. And she looks over and realizes that something's wrong. I've fainted and passed out, and I'm falling over on her. So she's talking to the winery, and she said, I gotta go now. I have to, Pete's either had a heart attack or something's wrong here. So basically we were about 5 miles away from the nearest hospital, and we'd been to this hospital before. My son had a bicycle accident, fallen off and hit his chin and made some stitches at the emergency room. So she fortunately had knowledge of where an emergency room was, and it was 5 miles away. So basically what she did is she just stepped on the accelerator and did a Danica Patrick through, morning traffic, and she hit all of the lights. So there was, that was serendipitous, and that all of the lights were green for her. The traffic was favorable. She was still weaving in and out of traffic. And as to listen to her describe it, at this point, I was out, so I have no memory of this, but I'm just listening to what she's told me after the fact. And she said that I'd taken a few deep breaths, and then approximately, 30 seconds, a minute before she gets to the hospital, there was one sort of last exhale and sort of a gurgle, and that was it, and then I was still after that. So she, that obviously her adrenaline was going at 90 miles an hour. She was going at 90 miles an hour, and she pulled into the emergency entrance the wrong way. And one of the favorable things about it was that, unbeknownst to her, one of the cars she had passed had an EMT in it with his wife, and they were going to the hospital for a pregnancy check for his wife. And as my wife sped past them, the wife looked over and said, "Hey, there's something wrong with the man in that car." And it's because my wife had to keep pushing me away from her. I was just falling over on her. And so anyway, so they followed us to the emergency room, and he actually helped drag my 230 pounds out of the car, because at that time when they checked me at the hospital, when I just was in the car, I had flatlined. There was no pulse, and I was clinically dead. And so my wife ran into the emergency room. The people said, "Well, here, we'll get him a wheelchair." She said, "No, he doesn't need a wheelchair. It's past that." And so they grabbed the gurney, and she actually pulled the gurney away from one of the nurses who wasn't moving quite fast enough for her, and ran out the door with the gurney, and the EMT is with me. They get me onto the gurney, take me into the emergency room, and immediately hit me with the defibrillator. And I think after several tries with that, they got they got my heart going again. And then what was interesting, again, this was all after the fact. I was dead at this point, and so I'm relying on everything that people have told me. But what they have is they have an interesting new protocol. I think it's 4 years old. It's being used more widely at a lot of different hospitals. And in situations like this, what they want to do is they want to try to rest the heart and also decrease the body's need for oxygen. And so what they end up doing is they chilled me down to like 90 degrees. They had some sort of a cold suit that they wrapped me in and ran cold water through it. And they also put me into a coma and put me on full life support. So I had a trach tube in. I was out. Like, they used propofol on me to put me way under. And so they did that, left me like that for 24 hours. and then they slowly start to warm you up, and then try to assess, okay, has there been any brain damage? And that's sadly, one of the biggest problems with that is oftentimes people, they might survive the event, but then they'll wake up with tremendous amounts of brain damage, or any amount of brain damage would not be good. And so they had to let me warm up, and they really did at different times. I mean, at one point they said I had a 5% chance to survive. And then once I had woken up, then the rate increased, but they still had to assess whether I had any brain damage or not. And so the next thing I knew, so 2 days after this, so this happened on a Thursday morning, on a Saturday, my first memory was waking up and looking out into my room and seeing my entire family there. And I said, "Hi, what are you doing here?" And they all started laughing, and they said, "We've got a story for you." And it really was that. And that was that. So I survived this thing, and I came out the other end of it. I was very, very, very lucky, blessed, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. A lot, like you said, there's a lot that had to really go right. And that was really your first recollection of anything after you passed out?
Exactly. And I don't remember actually leaving the car off. I know, I kind of remember driving there, but I don't remember getting in my wife's car. And so there was some short-term memory that just got wiped, the slate was sort of wiped clean.
So could you, so you had a sudden cardiac arrest. A lot of people would think of that as being a heart attack, and that's actually something that's different from what you went through.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about the difference?
Sure. What I've read about is that my issue was an electrical problem of the heart, not a plumbing problem. So it wasn't due to any, that they could see, it wasn't due to any blockage or valve problem. There was actually some sort of electrical stoppage, I guess. And I'd had, more of what I've read about this too is that most people that have had this have some heart issue, that triggers this. They still couldn't put a finger on what exactly caused mine, although I did have something called a left bundle branch block, which is an issue of one side of the heart, the timing beats, or just the electrical impulse being a little bit different than the other side. But it was an unremarkable issue, as it was explained to me, both by my GP and a cardiologist. So it's really, so the sudden cardiac arrest really is, it's not, technically it's not a heart attack, it's this other thing, which claims, way too many lives. I mean, it's just, you've read some of the numbers on it, and I think it's, I want to say like 350,000 people a year. And one of the very sad, scary things about it is that fully 95% of the people who have this happen outside of a hospital die, period, just straight off. And that's it.
And it has a lot to do with probably blood flow and circulation to the brain.
Exactly.
Like you were mentioning, sudden cardiac arrest stops your heart. You have no heartbeat. It's not like a heart attack where sometimes some of the heart will be working, but other parts of it will have a blockage.
Right.
Unconscious, not breathing.
Exactly. And so you rely on, one of the biggest things that I understand about it is something has to happen within, 4 to 6 minutes. Certainly on the 6-minute side, there's a great potential for serious brain damage. And so whether it's people performing CPR and then getting you hit with a defibrillator, those things have to happen, pretty quickly, for people to survive. And that's something that I wanted to, let people know more about. Before this, I was clueless about this whole thing. I didn't know what sudden cardiac arrest was.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the risk factors, like having other heart conditions, heart attacks being one of them. People who have had a heart attack are more likely, especially directly after their heart attack, to have a sudden cardiac arrest. Also people with high blood pressure or different circulatory, coronary issues can have higher chances of having a sudden cardiac arrest. Is there things you can do to try and prevent or check for that and
Yeah, I
prevent?
I would just say, understanding, maybe to start with family history. Obviously, genetics plays a strong part of this. My mother did die of a heart attack, and I should probably, and I didn't, obviously knew about that, but it was not, sort of on my radar. But I would say that, looking at, family history, and then if you do have some sort of history in your family of heart disease, is to be a little bit more aggressive about it, and just, obviously having an annual physical, but, having stress tests, periodically, just, seeing a cardiologist, seeing a specialist, I think is a good starting point.
Does a stress test have the potential to check and really see if something like this could potentially be something to worry about?
It does. It has, and it's a good question, because I had to identify the issue that I had, even though it was deemed unremarkable, and it may or may not have been, but the way it happened is a friend of mine is in sports medicine at Ithaca College, and she had said, Pete, why don't you come in for a stress test? And even before I got on the machine to, treadmill, and there was, to be, they're going to test my oxygen consumption. Even before I got on the machine, she noticed, she did check my heart rate, so an EKG, and saw something that said, Pete, you probably should see a cardiologist. It may or may not be something, but, I'd rather not have you do this stress test at this time. And so actually I went in for a nuclear stress test, and they did identify this left bundle branch block. But still, the interesting, troubling thing about it was that after my cardiologist in Florida said, he couldn't pinpoint, say, yes, this was it. So that was a little bit frustrating.
And again, you're talking about with the thing with your heart, that's a plumbing, and that's a moving blood flow, muscle thing, and
Exactly.
very different than the electrical failure, which is cardiac or sudden cardiac arrest.
Exactly.
So after you went through this experience, I know they put a heart monitor defibrillator thing in. Can you talk a little bit about that procedure, and then what that device can do for you if you had some heart issue in the future?
It's called an ICD, and I believe it stands for implantable something defibrillator, cardiac defibrillator. So what it can do is it can differ from like a pacemaker. It can do some of the same things, as I understand, that a pacemaker can do, but it's also at sort of as last resort, it can act as it is a defibrillator. So if, for instance, I had the same thing happen to me again, the device would try to make corrections in the heartbeat, and then if it couldn't, and there was, there's some sort of a rapid heartbeat that it can detect, and above a certain level, it'll shock me just like a defibrillator, paddles in the hospital. And so while I may not be, I'm not necessarily looking forward to that happening again, and I'm trying to do things with little change in lifestyle, not little, but major changes of eating habits and more exercise. So I'm hoping to not have that happen.
Right. Yeah. Right. Hopefully. I wasn't trying to like foreshadow, forebode it, but
Yeah.
it's definitely something which is good to have put in place, and that something to raise awareness about. People with heart issues, they could go, like you said, consult a cardiologist, consult a sports heart scientist, and it's amazing that the modern technology, which
Really is.
from putting you in a coma and lowering your temperature to even defibrillators and the different all those different procedures.
Exactly.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Truly is. It's I'm trying to think when the first defibrillators that people would wear came out. I think sometime in the 80s. And so this thing now is in a little pocket. It's not in the muscle, my pectoral muscle, but it's above. It's just under the skin above my pectoral muscle here, and it's literally the size of a pocket watch, a men's pocket watch. And there it sits, and I can feel it when I lie down on it, which is fine. But otherwise, I'm not really aware that it's there. And it's really quite amazing in that it monitors and records every heartbeat. And so I can download over the phone to the cardiologist what this thing is doing and whether or not it's been used or not. And that's, it had, right after it was installed, it was installed 4 days after I had the event. And so then I had it checked in February. It hadn't been used. That's a good thing. I have another check coming up, and I don't think that I certainly know that it'll tell me, obviously I'll know if it shocks me. That'll be, the technician said to me, I said, well, what could I expect if I receive a shock? And the guy said, well, be most likely sort of being kicked in the chest by a horse. And I said, oh good, I'll look forward to that. but I'll know, the hope and thought is that this is sort of an insurance policy, so I don't have to, worry so much. I mean, I think about it, and I try not to think about it a lot, and not to dwell on it, but it could happen again. But this would be an insurance policy, something to prevent it. So.
And besides all that awesome modern medicine, would be remiss if you didn't mention the doctors and the nurses and your wife and the EMT who was just driving by and knew something was wrong and took action.
Exactly. It was I think back over my 60 years, and I just turned 60 right after, days after this happened. So I actually, but one fun thing happened is that I now look at birthdays in a whole different light. I tried over the last 20 years, since I was 40, I tried to, sort of ignore them and sort of hope that they would go away. And now I realize with each passing birthday after this event that birthdays are special and they should be celebrated. And so I plan to, my whole idea about birthdays has changed 180 degrees. And during my 60 years, unfortunately, I have become sort of somewhat of a believer in Murphy's Law, that anything that can go wrong will. And so there are parts of this experience that, the fact that I had this thing happen to me, sort of, oh boy, here's Murphy's Law coming back again. But beyond that, what was quite remarkable is that from the event on, it was sort of the antithesis of Murphy's Law. So everything that could go right did. So I had the EMT who followed us. They were changing, there was a shift change at the hospital, so there was double the nurses in the emergency room. There was a cardiologist there. So all of the things that I needed to have very quickly, and that it really is, it's a matter of seconds at that point. Once your heart stops, I mean, 4 to 6 minutes after it stops, something better be happening, to just get the heart started, or you're dead or in serious trouble. And, so it was, then after when I went to leave the hospital, I'd asked one of the nurses, I said, can you give me a list of all the people who had something to do with my care? And so this nurse came back with a list of 30 names. And so it was just, that whole thing was just remarkable to me that here there have been, all of the different nursing shifts, cardiologists, neurologists. There were other consulting cardiologists on this. The guy who, anyway, I think the operating room that installed the ICD, all the staff there, on and on and on. So there was this whole huge list of people, and and I gave them a big thank you, when I left, and it was really, actually gave everybody 3 bottles of wine from King Ferry Winery.
Yeah.
So it was fun. But anyway, remarkable experience, and I just, as I say, I'm after all the reading that I've done on this subject, I realized that I won the lottery, and because here I am, and I have my wits about me, and I made it. Not only did I not die, but I didn't sustain any brain damage, which was remarkable. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, amazing. Good to be lucky sometimes.
Yes.
Everyone needs a little luck.
Absolutely. Did I make any changes, lifestyle changes? And the answer is yes. I've been trying to improve my diet. Eating more vegetables, and my wife, who sometimes I refer to as the food police, monitors my different food intake, and whether sometimes I want to hear it or not. But it's a good thing overall, and so she's right. So I'm trying to eat more vegetables, less red meat. for the time being, I've got to lay off the wine just because I'm taking some of the meds, say that, not to be taken with alcohol, so I'm trying to, play that straight. Then also the bicycling, so this whole idea of having a bicycle ride to raise awareness for the sudden cardiac arrest foundation came up. I rode my bicycle a lot down in Florida when I was recovering from this, and one of the things that I've noticed is that there are a lot of hills back here in upstate New York, different from Florida. Florida is very flat, and so I've gotten a nice road bike, and I've been trying to ride out on that thing. So I'm talking a good game right now, but I got to ride more. I have a friend who's a fitness director at Island Health and Fitness in Ithaca, so she's helping me work on a program. I've started working out with her again, and so I've tried to clean up my act and take care of myself a little bit better than I might have before. And so this led up to this. How do we end up talking about the event on June 29th? Well, what's going to happen anyway is that we're going to have an open house June 29th, and so we've got a chicken barbecue, we've got farmers market with local vendors from producing some wonderful produce and cheeses and all sorts of good things. So they're going to be here. It's a Saturday, June 29th. And
live music.
Yeah, live music is also going to happen here at the winery. So a friend of mine who's a two friends who are big bicycle enthusiasts said, Pete, maybe you could have some sort of a ride to raise awareness for what happened to you. And I said, after about 2 seconds, I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So that's where we're trying to plan here, and basically what we're talking about doing is having sort of a fun ride that's not too arduous, that people could go on, basically starting and ending here at King Ferry Winery, and then going out to other local businesses, and then presumably there would be a little bit more challenging ride for those people that wanted to do it. But we're hoping to raise awareness and raise money for the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation, and so I'm hoping that we can make that all happen. So that's what we're planning, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm hoping to have my road bike all up and ready, the tires properly inflated, and the correct clothing on, and hopefully I won't embarrass myself or my staff.
Yeah, it will be a fun event. Like you said, it'll be the open house, our summer open house. There'll be live music, great chance to try some of our new vintages and wines, and discounts, the farmers markets, and then on top of that, to help raise awareness for sudden cardiac arrest, we're going to have that bicycle cycling event, and that'll be a great way to help get people more informed and give back to the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited about it, and as I said, before this happened to me, I didn't have a clue about it, and so now, I'm pretty aware myself, but I think other people need to know about this, and that's a good